Yeah, so good afternoon, students. My name is Madam Kaaria Jennifer. Today we are learning agriculture, a topic on vegetable production. It's a Form 2 topic on production of tomatoes specifically. And we are going to look at various aspects of tomato production under vegetables. This is a topic that is going to benefit our learners both in Form 2, Form 3, and Form 4, since it is tested in the KCSE. Also, we are going to learn and acquire knowledge on how to produce various vegetable crops, and especially tomatoes. Before we move further, so we have said our topic is vegetables. And specifically tomato production. So as tomatoes are concerned, or vegetables are concerned, we need to understand what a vegetable is. And a vegetable is a crop that is eaten raw, or it can be cooked at some point. It is grown and eaten fresh, or while it is raw. So that is what a vegetable is. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So as you can see, a vegetable is any crop that is grown and eaten when it is fresh or raw. And as you all know, vegetables are highly perishable. They are very perishable in nature, and therefore we need to conserve them in such a way that they do not get spoiled so fast. Now, vegetables are of very high value commercially and also nutritional wise, because in terms of nutrition, vegetables are vegetables as far as nutrition is concerned. Also, vegetables, owing to the fact that our country relies so much on agriculture in terms of the GDP, vegetables, we export so many of them out of the country, and they earn our country a lot of foreign money, and that is one of the commercial advantages of vegetables. Kenya exports a lot of vegetables, and that is why we would like to equip our learners with knowledge and even skills when it comes to practical on how to produce vegetables so that they can boost their immunity and also provide, it can be a source of income locally and even nationally. Vegetables, they are categorized into various types. We have different types of vegetables. The types of vegetables. We need to understand the types of vegetables so that we know where tomato is coming in this discussion. We have various types of vegetables based on the part that is eaten. We have about 6 types of vegetables based on the type on the part of the plant that is eaten. And one of the type of vegetables that we have is the leaf vegetable. Leaf vegetable, where the leaf is eaten as food. And leaf vegetables examples, maybe as a learner you can recall some of those things. Leaf vegetables examples include things like spinach, cabbages, kales. All those are examples of leaf vegetables. We have the root vegetables. Root vegetables, where the root is eaten. The root is eaten as a vegetable. And examples of root vegetables include things like carrots, because we eat the root in a carrot. The beetroots, that's a root vegetable, and others. We have the fruit vegetable, where the fruit is eaten as food. The fruit vegetables include tomatoes. We have cucumbers, melons, pumpkins, pepper, and even the squashes. And those are the fruit vegetables. So you can see that is where the tomato is coming in. And this is what we are going to majorly focus on today, how to grow tomatoes for both home consumption and even for sale. We have another type of vegetable, the pod vegetable. The pod vegetable is where the pod is eaten, and examples include crops like beans, pigeon peas. When they are eaten, they are green and fresh. Those ones form part of the vegetables. Then we have the stem vegetables. In this case, we eat the stem as food. We use the stem as food, and they include crops or vegetables like leeks, asparagus, and spring onions. And finally, we have the bulb vegetables. Again, we eat the bulb, like in the case of the bulbed onion. So those are the different types of vegetables that we have, but today we are going to focus on the tomato. The reason why I chose this topic to discuss with learners who are doing agriculture in high school is because of the challenge that comes with answering the question in the exams with regards to production of these vegetables. I expect that by the end of this lesson, learners will be able to discuss production of all vegetable crops under the subheadings that we are going to discuss. We have in our syllabus, we usually cover 4 types of vegetables. That is tomatoes. We have tomatoes. We have carrots. We have onions and cabbage. Those are the 4 different types of vegetables that you're supposed to cover within our syllabus. And as I have said, our expectation is that once probably I discuss the subheadings in which we discuss tomatoes, as a learner, it will enhance their learning even in all these other vegetables. It is a very commonly tested area in our syllabus, and therefore it is of paramount importance that we tackle this bit with all the details. Now, I want to pose a question on vegetable production. I would like us to handle this bit in form of a question, and our question is discuss production of tomatoes. Discuss production of tomatoes under the following. Normally that is how it is posed in the exams, and usually the first subheading is on the varieties of tomatoes. Every learner should be able to state the varieties of tomatoes and even of carrots, onions, and cabbage. But for tomatoes specifically, we have two main varieties of tomatoes, and these are fresh market varieties. And then we have the processing varieties. Just as the name suggests, fresh markets normally are for consumption within the home. Processing varieties are varieties of tomatoes that are used in the production of substances like their added value, or their process to form the sauces and the tomato juices, and some are even canned. So those are the different types of varieties that we have: the fresh market varieties and the processing varieties. Normally, processing varieties are usually oval. They are oval in shape, while the fresh market varieties are round in shape. and it is good that my learners note that difference so that they're able to know. The processing varieties have a good keeping quality. These do not go bad so easily, so they have a good keeping quality. While the fresh market varieties, they do not last for long. After they are harvested, they do not last for long. Now, after the varieties, another subheading that is very, very critical in the answering of our exams and even in our learning, so that we understand how production of tomatoes is about to occur, are things to do with ecological conditions. Ecological conditions. Now, ecological conditions, what do we mean by these? Ecological conditions are those weather conditions that favor tomato production. Tomato production is favored by conditions that are not very unique from other crops, and that is why, as I said, ecological conditions might not vary so much from one vegetable crop to the other. So when we are talking about ecological conditions, and this is a part that learners at some point they do not understand much on how to respond in this bit, we are supposed to focus on things like soil. How should the soil in which we grow tomatoes be? How should it be? What kind of rainfall do tomatoes tolerate? What kind of rainfall do tomatoes tolerate? How about the temperature? What kind of temperature should tomatoes be grown within? What kind of temperature do tomatoes do well in? And also, with regards to altitude, the height above the sea level, when it comes to soil, how best do tomatoes, or what kind of soil do tomatoes do well in? All crops, not only vegetables, but even other crops like maize, beans, and all those other crops all crops do well in soils that are deep, fertile, and well drained. So I would like learners to understand that this is a characteristic that is common among all crops. There is no crop that does not require soil that is deep, fertile, and well drained. All crops require soils that are fertile and well drained, apart from crops like, of course, arrowroots and rice. Then we have the rainfall. Tomatoes, what kind of rainfall amounts do tomatoes do well in? Tomatoes do well in a rainfall that is between 750 millimeters to about 1300 millimeters of rainfall throughout the growing period. That is the kind of rainfall that tomatoes tolerate. If the rainfall goes above that, it will spoil them. If it goes below that, it means that the moisture requirements will be compromised. So rainfall should be between 750 millimeters per annum, and this is per annum, or within the growing period, within the growing period. Temperature. For temperature, crops require, or rather tomatoes require, a temperature that is warm temperatures, or we can talk of warm climate, because climate and temperature, warm represents the temperature part. So tomatoes do well in areas that are warm. And then we have altitude. Altitude is at height above the sea level. At what altitude should we grow tomatoes? It should be between 0 to 2,100 meters above the sea level. So that is the kind of altitude, or those are the ecological requirements for tomatoes, as you can see on your screen. Another bit when it comes to tomato production is on issues of nursery establishment, because the first thing you do after you identify the variety that you want to plant as a farmer, and as after you have identified whether your area has all these ecological requirements, the next thing that you're supposed to do is to establish a nursery. Before we plant, we do not plant tomatoes directly in the seed bed. We are supposed to first of all establish a nursery, and after we establish the nursery, we transplant the already established seedlings. So establishment of a nursery is whereby you identify a very suitable site for the nursery, and this site for the nursery, as we discussed earlier on, is should have characteristics like it should be gentle sloping to prevent issues of flooding. You should not have cultivated a crop within Solanaceae family, because tomatoes belong to Solanaceae family. It should not, you should not have cultivated a crop within Solanaceae family in that piece of land. It should be near a water source. Those are some of the characteristics in where you establish a nursery. Now, with nursery establishment, you should prepare your nursery. Okay. Nursery establishment. How do you establish the nursery? As we discuss this bit on establishment of a nursery, we expect you as a learner, you explain to you, when we ask the question in an exam, we expect you to explain to us how exactly we are supposed to establish the nursery. And as you can see, the nursery should be prepared to a fine tilled. How do we achieve the fine tilled? You move from stages of clearing that land. After you clear the land, you're supposed to move on to the point at which you dig using the hand tools or using machinery like plows if it is in large scale. And then you move to a point, you move further. The next step of harrowing, you carry out harrowing. You harrow, that is you break the soil clods until all the soil clods are broken. And that is how you achieve a fine tilt. A fine tilt means that the soil is very, very fine. You have broken all the clods, and then after you prepare that fine tilt, you raise the soil. You raise the soil to a height, that soil that you've prepared, you raise it to a level of 15 centimeters to prevent flooding, so that in case there are rains, your soil will be above the water when it floods. Now, after you raise that nursery, you are supposed to spread decomposed organic manure, and you can even add a little bit of DSP fertilizer, that is the double superphosphate. You raise it a little, you add that kind of a combination to enrich your nursery with nutrients, and especially nitrogen, because these seedlings require a lot of nitrogen to grow. Then after that, you are supposed to make drills using a finger or a stick. You make drills using a finger or a stick in that nursery that has a fine tilt, and then you drop the seeds singly, and then you cover them lightly. You drop the seeds and then you cover them lightly. That way you have already established the nursery. Now, one of the challenges that we face when we ask this question in the exams is that sometimes we find that we have combined the bit on nursery establishment and management practices. When we combine these two, the students in most cases, they avoid, or they do not talk about the establishment, and that is why I separated it a little bit, so that students understand there is a difference between establishing a nursery and the management practices within the nursery. Now, the establishment is what we have talked about. You till the land to a fine tilt, you spread manure, or well decomposed manure and the double superphosphate, and then you make drills that are about 5 centimeters apart using a finger or a stick. And then after you have established, that is the establishment, and you put the seeds in those drills and you cover lightly with the soil. You should not put a lot of soil to enhance faster germination. Then management practices involves how you manage that nursery. After you have established your nursery, how do you manage the nursery? You do not just establish the nursery, you have planted your seeds and then you leave it like that. You are supposed to manage the nursery. And when you are managing the nursery, there are certain practices that you do, and that one takes us to nursery management practices. What are these things that you are supposed to do when you are managing the nursery? So we have management practices. And the management practices, I have said, are all those activities that we carry out in our nurseries. And the first thing, of course, you do for any crop or any nursery is watering. You are supposed to water your crops. Why are we watering the crops? We are watering the crops so that we can supply adequate moisture. To supply adequate moisture. Okay. Yeah, you water the seeds that you have planted after establishing the nursery, so that you can supply adequate moisture, as you can see on your screens. Another thing we are supposed to do as far as management is concerned is you put mulch. And you are supposed to put mulch, you lay mulch, organic mulch, you put mulch in your on the nursery that you have established. And this mulch is composed of those dry organic materials, so that these dry materials are able to prevent a lot of evaporation of water from the nursery. And therefore, mulching is very, very important. In fact, later it becomes organic matter that is going to boost the fertility of that portion. Also, we shade. We are supposed to shade. So please, every time you are responding to this bit of the management practices, you have to give a reason why we are doing that. Why do we water? Why do we mulch? Why do we shade? A shade is erected after you remove the mulch. Mulch is supposed to stay in the nursery for like 3 to 4 days, or after the germination has occurred. And then you remove that mulch. After you remove the mulch, you now shade, because the seedlings are still quite delicate, so that they are not so much scorched by the hot sun. So you erect a shade, and again the shade is to prevent damage of the seedlings by the sun that is too hot, and also it minimizes evaporation of water. We have weed control. You need to control weeds. We need to control weeds in our nurseries, and we do it through or by uprooting. You're supposed to uproot. You cannot move with a fork jembe to the nursery because it is a small portion of land, and also the seedlings are very, very tiny, and at some point they are crowded. You do not move with them with jembes and fork jembes in the nursery. You are supposed to uproot. And why are we uprooting the weeds? To reduce competition. We minimize competition. We minimize competition between weeds and the crops. There is a pest and disease control. Pests will come. Pest control and diseases, and also control of diseases. Seedlings of tomatoes are attacked by pests, and so many pests in that nursery, and also diseases. We need to control those diseases and also pests. Disease control is done differently. We do not do it the same way. When it comes to pests, you can apply appropriate pesticides. You know, pests are controlled by pesticides or using pesticides. So you use appropriate, and the word is appropriate, pesticides, so that you can be able to control the pests. You can engage other cultural practices like crop rotation, such that you do not return the nursery where it was before, to prevent a lot of buildup of those pests. So you can control through crop rotation. When it comes to disease control, you can control diseases using appropriate chemicals, depending on the disease. If it is a fungal disease, you use an appropriate fungicide for that matter. We have the last management practice, which is very, very important. Hardening off. Hardening off. Hardening off is a very, very important management practice within the nursery, whereby they are almost ready. Expose them to conditions that will make them adapt to the bed. They will not be watered daily. In the seedbed, there will be no shade. In the seedbed, you might delay as a farmer to control weeds. So you're supposed to expose these seedlings. You'll find seedbed, and as you control, you are supposed to regulate the amount of watering. We harden seedlings by regulating the amount of watering. If you're watering maybe 2 times in a day, you can decide to even forgo watering for like 2 or 3 days so that they can harden a little bit. Again, you remove shade. Shade removal is part of hardening off. So we are supposed to remove shade, and that is part of hardening. If you do not harden your seedlings, you are likely to have challenges with those seedlings when you transfer them to the seed bed. And that is on nursery management practices. That is how we manage the nursery. That is how we establish the nursery, and also we manage it. Another subheading that is still part of tomato production. We have managed our nursery. They are now ready for transplanting. The next thing we do is we prepare the land where you're going to plant them, where you're going to transfer them. We are supposed to prepare the land preparation. Land preparation. Again, students find it very difficult at some point. Yeah, so land preparation is whereby you need to prepare the land so that the land can be ready to receive these seedlings that you are removing from the nursery. And this land preparation entails selecting a piece of land that you have not planted tomatoes or crops within the tomato family, that is the Solanaceae family. Things like Irish potatoes, pepper, tobacco should not have existed in that piece of land. So you ensure they have not existed so that you can be able to transplant tomatoes there. For the last 3 years, they should not have existed there. And then you prepare the land by, of course, clearing. You dig out all the weeds that are there. You remove all the perennial weeds. You dig holes that are deep enough at around 15 centimeters. And in those holes, you put manure that is well decomposed again. And also you can add DSP fertilizer. And then you mix it thoroughly with the soil. Remember, DSP fertilizer is a nitrogenous fertilizer. Yeah, you add DSP fertilizer. And this DSP fertilizer is a fertilizer that is nitrogenous. So you need to mix it thoroughly with the soil so that it does not scorch. It does not burn your tiny seedlings that are that you are planting. So you plant or you transplant those seedlings there. Now, after you have prepared your land, you have dug the holes, you have mixed it with manure and fertilizers and all that. The next part that you do is transplanting. You transplanting. And this part of transplanting carries around 3 to 4 marks, depending. This transplanting is now how you remove. There's a procedure for removing the seedlings from the nursery. There's a very clear procedure that you need to follow. And the first thing you do when you are removing the seedlings from the nursery, you're supposed to water that seedling 3 to 4 hours. And especially for the vegetable crops, 3 to 4 hours you water the nursery. so that as you take them out using a garden trowel, as you scoop them out, the roots will not be damaged and the soil will be around those roots. So you are supposed to water, and then as you transplant again, pick healthy and vigorously growing seedlings. The ones that are very weak, the ones that are diseased, you do not select those ones. Also, plant one seedling per hole. Do not put two seedlings in one hole. Plant one so that they do not compete so much for resources like moisture, nutrients, and even space. And then we prefer transplanting seedlings late in the evening or early in the morning, or even on a cloudy day, but preferably late in the evening or a cloudy day. After you transplant, your seedlings are already in the seed bed. They are now in the land. You have planted them. Again, you do not leave these seedlings in the land just like that. You are supposed to manage them in the field. Field management practices. After you plant, you do not just leave your tomatoes there like that. You have to manage them. You have to manage them in the field. And some of the things that you do when we are managing the seedlings, the seedlings or now the plants in the field are things to do with gapping. Gapping is a field management practice. Gapping is one of them. So you are supposed to gap to maintain correct plant population. Gapping is where you are supposed to gap. That is to replace the ones that have already dried up or probably they were eaten up by pests. That is what we refer to as gapping, and we do this to maintain correct plant population so that we do not have gaps in the farm. We have top dressing. Top dressing is another field management practice where we add or we enrich our soil with CAN fertilizers or nitrogenous fertilizers so that these tomatoes can have enough of nutrients and especially nitrogen for proper growth. Then we have weeding is another management practice that we carry out in the field. You need to control weeds within your shamba to reduce competition for nutrients. We have staking. As you can see, we have staking. Staking is very special and it only applies to tomatoes. We do not stake carrots, we do not stake cabbages, we do not stake our onions, but we stake tomatoes, and especially the tall varieties of tomatoes that should be staked, where we support them using very strong sticks. We support them so that because of various reasons, as you can see, there is to enhance production of clean fruits, to facilitate spraying and harvesting, to control incidences of diseases, outbreaks such as blight, and to prevent infestation of soil-borne pests. And then we have pruning. You remove excess vegetation so as to enhance fruit development. You need to control pests within your tomatoes using appropriate insecticides. And there are so many types of pests that attack tomatoes, like the American bollworm and the cutworms. We need to control them using appropriate insecticides. And then we have disease control. We need to control diseases again. There are certain diseases that attack our tomatoes. We need to control them using appropriate fungicides, like in the case of tomato blight. Blight is a fungal disease. You can decide to rogue, that is you remove and destroy. You uproot and destroy affected crops. Use certified seeds, crop rotation, and all those control methods. Then finally, as we conclude, another bit that I feel we are not supposed to leave behind is the bit on harvesting and marketing. It does not carry a lot of marks, but you will still find around 2 marks within this area, and students do not know what to write as far as harvesting and marketing is concerned, and especially harvesting. And for harvesting of tomatoes, when they are for canning, they should be left to ripen. If they are for canning, that is putting in cans for long periods of storage. Leave them to ripen on the plant before they are harvested. If they are for fresh market, if you want to maybe sell them for families' consumption and all that, as soon as the red color starts to appear, that is the right time to pick them, so that they can ripen maybe as you take them to the market, or they can spend a few more days. And then after you pick them, where do you place them? Where do you place the tomatoes? You place the tomatoes in crates. That is how you transport them, so that they do not go bad so easily. And that is all what I have in terms of production of tomatoes. I believe that by then, as we conclude, and as I even receive your responses and your questions, we are at a better position on how to respond to this question on production of tomatoes, and even on production of other vegetable crops, because as you realize, most of these subheadings, as I said earlier, will apply to the majority of the crops, and especially vegetables, that we discuss in Form 2. So that is what we have. I'll be glad to respond to your questions from our various platforms. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that is what we have with regards to production of tomatoes. Yeah, so as we wind up, for the candidates, especially in Form 4, beware of all those subheadings that we have talked about, because sometimes they do not bring everything. They do not bring everything as far as the subheadings are concerned, but be very keen with varieties of vegetables. If it is onions, know the varieties of onions. If it is carrots, know the varieties of carrots. So we have carrots, we have onions, we have tomatoes, and we have cabbage. All the varieties of all these, make sure you are able to recall them. And then ecological requirements. So the varieties are very unique, and it depends on each crop. Ecological requirements do not vary much. Ecological requirements do not vary much. Remember, I said you should focus on the soil, and the point on soil is very constant for all crops, apart from crops that grow in waterlogged soils like rice and arrowroot. Temperature varies a bit. Then we have rainfall. Rainfall does not vary much with most of these vegetables. Rainfall of about 750 millimeters to 1300 millimeters within the growing period, distributed well within the growing period, is okay. And then finally we have the altitude. Again, altitude does not vary much. Between 0 and 2100 meters above the sea level is okay for the majority. nursery. So those are the ecological requirements for for all the crops, but they vary, especially the temperature. It really varies. The soil is constant. And then I talked about nursery establishment. Nursery establishment is constant for all crops. That is tomatoes. It is the same. The same procedure applies to tomatoes, to cabbage, to onions, and even to carrots. Although carrots are not transplanted, it is good you note that. They are not usually transplanted. They remain in that where you plant them. So we don't call it nursery, but land preparation for the carrots. Then we have nursery management. Nursery management practices. These ones apply to all vegetables, except a few that I'm going to mention. Things to do with watering, and this is, I really want to focus, to concentrate this, especially with the candidates. Watering, all crops must be watered for the reasons that we mentioned. Mulching must happen for all crops. Shading must happen for all crops. And remember to state the reason why we do that. Pest control must happen in all crops. It is just that some crops vary. Pests vary depending on the crop. We have disease control. All crops are affected by diseases. Disease control. And for the reasons that we mentioned, there's hardening off. Hardening off happens for all crops apart from carrots because they are not transplanted. So for carrots, it's a bit special. And those are some of the management practices. And also there's another one, probably you didn't mention, the pricking out, where you remove the ones that are so overcrowded. Pricking out. You remove the excess ones, and those are some of the management practices, and with their reasons. Please do not list down points as I have listed. In the exam, you have to give us a reason why you're watering, why you're mulching, why you're shading, why you are controlling pests and diseases, and why you're hardening off, and why you're pricking out. Still, as we conclude, it's also important we look at a summary on how we prepare the land. After you have established the nursery and you have managed it, you need to prepare the land preparation. I said with land preparation, you select a piece of land, Solanaceae family, or that crop family has not been grown before, and you till it and you remove the perennial weeds and so on and so forth. And then we have the transplanting. Transplanting happens in all crops apart from carrots, as I have said, and the procedure is the same. You water 3 to 4 hours before transplanting. You select the vigorously growing seedlings, and you do it in the evening or on a cloudy day, and you plant 1 seed per hole. And finally, we have the field management practices. Field management. You manage the crops in the field. And that is how we manage the crops. That's how we manage the crops. All those field management practices that I mentioned, the disease control, the pests control, the gapping, the rogging, all those management practices, we are supposed to carry them out. And then we harvest and market our produce. Harvesting and marketing. For marketing bit is where we talk about putting them in crates and taking them to the market. And that marks the end of our lesson. Thank you. As I said, Teacher Jennifer from Regina Sherry Girls. I'm glad to have interacted with you today. Yeah, and